Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today is the third and final video of my 2020 awards. This one we'll be going over Coach of the Year, Rookie of the Year, and MVP. If you missed parts 1 and 2, they will be linked in the description and in the cards. Part 1, I gave you my role stars for 2020, while in part 2, I went over my awards for Best Midseason Addition, 7th Man of the Year, and Comeback Player of the Year. So if you want to check those out, as I said, description and cards, you can find links to those. As we jump into the final set of awards, let me, of course, establish a couple things once again. As with the last two videos, all of these awards have 5 nominees, and those 5 nominees will be told in alphabetical order. So there is no confusion, hopefully. That is how everything is done for that. And because these are the big awards, these are the ones that the Overwatch League also does as well. These are the ones I saved for last because I think they're kind of the big awards that are the main ones for the season. And I wanted to save them so that we can have them right before we get to the playoffs on Thursday. So without further ado, let's get into it and start with the first award, which is the Coach of the Year. Coach of the Year is a difficult one to really say who wins from an outsider's perspective, because I'm not seeing what goes on inside the teams for the most part. Only glimpses based on what you see from social media. That's really all we get. Whereas sometimes if you see players playing, you get an idea of what's going on with that player. You can see their performances on stream. You know how good they are based on what you're seeing in front of you. And you can see their work being done very easily. Coaches, it's not quite as easy, but you can definitely tell which coaches have a big impact on improving their team, which coaches have less of an impact on improving their team, which coaches kind of elevate their players, which ones don't elevate them as much. So this one, for me, was a little difficult, but I feel pretty confident in my 5 nominees and my choice. So let's jump in and start with the first nominee, which is Krusty, the head coach for the San Francisco Shock. Quite possibly the greatest coach in Overwatch history. Quite possibly one of the greatest coaches in esports history, but we won't jump into that just yet. Krusty has been very important for this Shock team. He has created an environment that allows them to succeed even when they have pieces that come and go. Sinatra retires, Architect gets traded, Tayo and Twilight get added in. And that didn't really stop this team. There was no noticeable dip in their performances when these things happened. They just adjusted and they changed and they adapted to these changes. And I think that very much highlights the strength of Krusty as a coach, that he is able to elevate this team in a way that they are able to succeed no matter who they have on this roster, no matter what pieces are in and which pieces are out. Krusty makes it work, and the system works so well. This team won 2 tournaments. They won the May Melee, they won the Countdown Cup, and I think you have to give Krusty a lot of credit for the work that he was able to put in for getting to that point, and that is why he is a Coach of the Year nominee. The next nominee is Kooky, head coach of the Florida Mayhem. Formerly a player, of course, playing for the Seoul Dynasty and the LA Valiant. Retires from play in 2019 to move over to coaching Runaway. Leads them to a Contenders title and then finds his way into the Overwatch League, where he has been a very important part of a very good Florida Mayhem team. A team that has been very disappointing since the beginning of 2018. They have very much excelled over time. This team is very good right now, and a lot of that credit has to go to Kooky, his coaching, and his ability to make the most out of his players. That is why he is on this list. The next nominee is Moon, of course, a player with a connection to Kooky. Of course, coached Kooky when Kooky was at the LA Valiant. Moon, fired by the LA Valiant, or relieved of his coaching duties by the LA Valiant back in 2019, finds his way to the Shanghai Dragons here in 2020 and has helped make them the best team in the league by record. They've been a dominant force all season, and a lot of that comes down to Moon's ability to coach this team, find the pieces that work, and work this roster together. They've had some slips at times. Their summer showdown performance wasn't the best. Kind of lack of synergy, a meta that didn't really favor them as strongly, and some things that clearly kind of made them a little uncomfortable. But a couple slip-ups here and there don't erase the fact that Moon has had an incredible season coaching this Dragons roster to be the best, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. Next is Packing 10, head coach for the LA Valiant. Took over for this team last season, helped make them one of the best teams down the stretch last season. They were one game away from making the play-ins cutoff, and then 2020 comes around. Bunch of players are gone. Space gone. Kariv gone. Custa gone. Agility's gone. But this team was able to anchor themselves, was able to find very good players through Packing 10's scouting, through his coaching, make a very competitive Valiant roster. When a lot of people thought this team would be bottom 3, nobody put this team at top 10. This is a team that through the players that Packing 10 brought in, like KSP, Dreamer, Lastro, Rain, these really strong, consistent damage players that Packing 10 found and brought in, these really strong supports that Packing 10 found and brought in. He was able to build a very solid team that has exceeded all expectations, and Packing 10 deserves much of the credit for the success that this team has found so far in 2020. Final candidate is Rush, head coach of the Paris Eternal. Formerly coached Element Mystic when they were dominating contenders back in 2019. Make his way into the Overwatch League as head coach for the Paris Eternal. Brings with him a couple pieces. The big ones, of course, Sparkle, Exy, Hanbin. Also creates a very strong coaching staff. You also have 9K as general manager, of course, formerly with the San Francisco Shock. Brings in Levi, brings in Aid for coaches. Built a super strong coaching staff that has been able to make the Paris Eternal into one of the top teams in the league. Top 4 record overall. They won the Summer Showdown when they were pretty low in the bracket. They were pretty low in the standings. They fought hard. They fought tooth and nail to get here. But the Paris Eternal, as one of the top teams in the league, a lot of credit needs to be given to Rush for his work getting this team where they are now. But, of course, only one can get the award. So, my Coach of the Year for 2020 is Kuki. What Kuki's been able to do for this Florida Mayhem roster is, without a doubt, one of the most impressive coaching jobs I think I have seen in the Overwatch League so far. You have players like Fate and BQB, who in 2019, not a ton of people were really high on them. Fate was one of the best main tanks in 2018, but in 2019 he had a down year. Did not look incredible. Traded to this Mayhem roster for a bunch of contenders and bench players, and has really had a resurgence this season. BQB, a player who was really kind of a somber one-trick in a lot of people's eyes, has been an incredible hit scan player for this Mayhem roster. Kuki has elevated his players. They've found their potential, and we have seen Kuki's impact a lot through social media, through Swing Chip, the team manager, I believe, for the Florida Mayhem, and her Bits of Mayhem tweets. They've really given us a good look at Kuki and how he elevates this team, his impact that he has on his players, and I think that is one of the big reasons why Kuki is so prominent, I think, in the scene as a coach. We've seen firsthand what he does. We've seen firsthand how he works with his players, how his players respect him, how he respects his players. And I just think that there are very few coaches that are as good as Kuki, and Kuki really has been incredible as a coach for this Mayhem squad, turning them from one of the bottom teams in the league to one of the top, and that is why he is my Coach of the Year for 2020. The next award is Rookie of the Year. A very difficult award to give out. A ton of great rookies have shown up this season, have performed at a high level this season, but only one can win the award. But let's praise 5 of them first for their play so far this season. First is Alarm, the flex support for the Philadelphia Fusion. By far the biggest rookie to join this team so far this season. Hisu has been good, obviously, has been a huge part of this Philadelphia Fusion team as well. Of course, his Sombra play been very good, and his ability to play a hit scan alongside Carpe when it's needed. It's been a huge boost for this Fusion roster. But Alarm has been the piece that has been missing from this team. The flex support position was by far their weakest position in seasons past. It was a thing that I felt really held them back the most. Boombox is a fine player. I don't think he was good enough to be the starting flex support on a top level team. Alarm comes in and has been incredible on the BAP, on the Ana, on the Zenyatta, even on the Brigitte, he's been very good. And he has brought a ton of consistency to this team that they did not have before at the flex support position. He's helped enable Sato to perform at a high level and Carpe to perform at a high level. And I think that when you look at Alarm as a player, arguably one of the most important players of the season and one of the most important players by far for one of the top teams in the league, the Philadelphia Fusion. My next candidate is Krong, flex tank for the Guangzhou Charge. I give Krong a lot of credit. I watch a lot of APAC matches this season, and very few players impress me as much as Krong. Really the only new piece on this Guangzhou Charge roster going into 2020. Yes, they had Neptuno on this team, and he is a new player for this team. And he started for this team at the beginning of the season, but he hasn't seen much playtime since then. But Krong has been very good. He's been an incredible flex tank. He's good on all of the flex tanks. His D.Va is incredible. His Sigma is incredible. His Zarya is incredible. And we have seen so much come out of Krong, and he's performed at such a high level. He has been the piece that has really elevated this Guangzhou Charge team to new heights, to make them one of the top teams in the league. Other players in this team have improved as well, but a lot of credit needs to be given to Krong for how he has been able to truly make this Charge team one of the top teams in the league. The next Rookie of the Year candidate is Hanbin, another flex tank, this one, of course, for the Paris Eternal. Hanbin led the league in eliminations. Of all the players in the league, none had more than Hanbin, 2,696 eliminations. Very good year from him. Third in hero damage with 1,029,520. Stats, pretty good from him. And also, he was the most consistent part of the front line for this Paris Eternal team. They switched a decent amount between Ben Best, between No Smite, but as soon as Hanbin was eligible to play, he was the central piece for this team. He led this team's front line. He was incredible for this team. He was a major leader for this team. You cannot have the success that the Paris Eternal have in 2020 without a player like Hanbin at the front. He is one of the top players this season and is certainly one of the top rookies this season. That is why he is on this list. Next is KSP. Of course, KSP, the season leader for final blows, season leader for hero damage, season leader for solo kills. He has been one of the best DPS players of the season. His hit scan play has been incredible. His Widow, his Ashe, his McCree have all looked top tier. This team is at their best when KSP is playing, when he can play his comfort roles. And we've even seen him flex over to Junkrat and find success. He's played some Echo and found success. KSP is a very good player. The most important piece, in my opinion, to this LA Valiant roster. Their success this season came very heavily on KSP and his successes. Ton of credit to a player who has been electric and has been on fire all year, providing his team with consistent top-level play. Final Rookie of the Year candidate is Yaki of the Florida Mayhem. Yaki has been one of the top DPS players all season. A lot of work he has put in. Top 5 in final blows. one of the few to surpass the 1,000 final blows mark. He's also been very consistent on his tracer in particular, arguably the best tracer in North America, one of the top tracers in the league in general. Plus, he also looked very good on the Echo, on the Genji. His hero pool is not the most diverse, but the heroes that he plays at such a high level that you have to just give Yaki credit for being one of the top DPS players all season. He's an MVP candidate for a reason. He is very good and deserves a ton of credit for what he has been able to do this season for the Florida Mayhem. But ultimately, only one of those players can get the award, and I am going to give the award to Alarm. Alarm has arguably been the best flex support all season. Arguably been the best support all season. And of course, arguably been the best rookie all season. And even arguably has been the best player all season. He has been insane this season. Alarm's flex support play has been top-notch. As I said before, he has been one of the central pieces in enabling the success of a lot of these players. He led the league in healing, which is no simple feat. Certainly a very impressive thing that he was able to do. And when you look at the stats of all of the flex support heroes that he played, the Brig, the Baptiste, the Ana, and of course the Zenyatta, he is top in a lot of the damage stats as well, which is impressive. Second in final blows by 1. Second in final blow to death ratio. Top in eliminations. Second in hero damage. And as I said before, first in healing. The best flex support of the season. Far and away, he is my rookie of the year for what he has done this season to help enable the Philadelphia Fusion to be one of the best teams in the league. And need I mention his death rate, which is also pretty good. He's not dying a ton. Very good player. Very successful player. Lots of credit to him where it is deserved. The final award is the MVP award. I have 5 candidates. I posted them on Twitter about 2 weeks ago, my 5 finalists. So if you didn't see that list, of course I'll go through it again. But this has been a super tough award for me. This was the toughest award to decide. There were 2 players in particular who I will talk about when I get to the reveal, who were incredibly close. But ultimately, I could only pick one. So I know people might have different opinions on MVP, and that's what I expect. But let's real quickly go over the MVP candidates, and I will reveal to you who I picked and who I voted for to be MVP. The first nominee is Alarm. Obviously, just talked about him in my Rookie of the Year bit, so I won't talk too long about Alarm here. What he's done all season has been impressive. He's been incredible for this Fusion team. He's been instrumental in their success. And as Rookie of the Year, I think you are pretty much a shoo-in to be an MVP finalist. He's been so good for this team all season. That is why he is one of the MVP frontrunners, I think, this season. Next is Alarm's teammate, Carpe. Carpe has had a great season. You look at his stats, he has been electric. Of course, leads the league in final blow to death ratio. Top half of the league in every stat that there is when it comes to damage dealers, especially. Carpe has just been super consistent. He's been a king of consistency all season. He has performed when this team needs him to perform. He has come up in some big moments, in some big matches. They've struggled a bit all season in some of their big games, against the Shock and in the Countdown Cup, against the Eternal, in the Summer Showdown, of course, against the Mayhem in the May Melee. But Carpe was not the problem that this team had. He came up big when they needed him. He has been super clutch for this team all season. I made a video breaking down Carpe's MVP case. I thought it was a very interesting one. He certainly is one of my front runners, and I think Carpe is one of the most electric players, one of the most exciting players to watch. He is one of my finalists. Next is Krong of the Guangzhou Charge. Once again, a player I just talked about when talking about the MVP or Rookie of the Year finalists. Krong has been such a great season, has been such a great player this season. My bad. His presence on this Guangzhou Charge roster has been really the thing that changed for them between 2019 and 2020. Really the only new starter for this team, but this team is so much better this season than it was last season. And sure, some of that could come down to just all the other pieces around him elevating and becoming much better. Eileen, a player who had some good moments in 2019, has been consistently great in 2020. He is another MVP finalist, of course, in the Overwatch League, the top 10 finalists. So Krong is a very good player who has just brought so much consistency to this team. He is part of the reason why this team has been elevated to the level they have. His play has been super good on all the flex tank heroes, and he is a leading MVP candidate in my eyes, even if many other fans don't see it that way. Next is Fleta of the Shanghai Dragons, another DPS player, not putting up the same flashy plays and clutch performances that Carpe has, though of course there is the moment on Kings Row in the May Melee Finals where he came out on the Widowmaker and just got a bunch of picks that really helped turn the tides for the Shanghai Dragons in that reverse sweep win. Fleta has been one of the top DPS players all season. He has been able to do a lot for this Shanghai Dragons roster, making them one of the top teams in the league. He has been electric. He has been a superstar all season. And it is a player that I look at as certainly one of the most electrifying players whose story this season has been incredible, getting traded to a new team and still performing at a very high level. Fleta, great player on a great team, very important piece for that team. He is one of the finalists. And the final nominee is Void, once again, of the Shanghai Dragons. I know I criticized the league last season for having the 5 MVP finalists only represent 3 of the teams in the league, and then I did the same thing this year. It was difficult for me, and those are just the 5 that I felt were the best candidates, and I feel somewhat bad for criticizing the league last season about it, but I also don't because I still think they got the wrong candidates. But I digress. Void has been the most consistent piece for this Shanghai Dragons roster. They've had tons of switch-ups in their main tank position early in the season. Their DPS lineup was different at times. Sometimes they had DM, sometimes they had Ding, but usually they had Fleta and Lip, but there was some switching there. With the support line, we saw Luffy come in for both Lee Jae-gon and Izayaki at times. So there's a lot of mix-up on the Shanghai Dragons roster, especially early in the season. But Void was the consistent piece. A player who a lot of people were kind of sleeping on after his performances in 2018 and 2019. A lot of analysts and fans weren't super high on Void as a player. But he was one of the top flex tanks in 2019, comes over to the Shanghai Dragons and proves that he is the top flex tank of 2020. And he has been incredible for a very good Shanghai Dragons team, the best team in 2020 by record. Void, super important, central piece to that. He is the final MVP candidate. As I said before, this is a very hard one for me. This one was very close. There's a lot of really great players this season, and these 5 were the ones who I felt the strongest about. But obviously, players like Choi Hyobin, players like Yaki have had great seasons as well. And it was very difficult to pick just one MVP. It was difficult to just narrow it down to 5, but it was especially difficult to narrow it down to 1. For the longest time, I was debating between my top 2, which were Carpe and Void. Those 2 to me have just been so good this season, and they've been the 2 that really I had to choose between. But ultimately, I made my decision, and my MVP for 2020 is Carpe. And I know I made the video on Carpe, and I want people to know that when I made that video, I genuinely was serious when I said that this wasn't a video about me trying to say, here's why Carpe is MVP. I really didn't know that I was going to pick Carpe at the time. I was honestly on the Void train for a while. It was really that match against the San Francisco Shock back in week 28 that Carpe really kind of solidified his position. He came up huge that weekend. And in that match, he made his mark. He was incredible. He did a lot of work. He was able to do a ton against Ans, who's been having a great season. And what Carpe's been able to do, just statistically, has been incredible. I mean, 2.3 final blow to death ratio on the season is insane. You know, Fleta, who's had a great season, was at 2.0. Striker 2.1 was kind of the next best thing on really of the DPS players that were super consistent. Hisu had a 2.0, Yaki to 1.9, but Carpe's 2.3, which it doesn't seem like a lot when I say like he had a 2.3 final blow to death ratio when you look at other ones having like 2.1 or 2.2, but when you have that much time played and you've done so much, you've had so many games that you've played, the fact that you are the only player with a 2.3 final blow to death ratio is insane. And not to mention, of course, the fact that Carpe's just clutch potential is insane. His clutch final blows are absurd. That, to me, is value. When I'm weighing the value of being the consistent piece for your team, like Void was, versus the value of coming up big every time your team needs you to come up big, you make the plays that need to be made. You come up big in the moments that you need this player to come up big in. Carpe did it every single time. He did it time and time again. Regardless of the fact that Carpe's main forefront, the main reason why he was so prominent as an MVP candidate was due to the lack of other teams playing at the beginning of the season. Carpe never died down. Carpe never slowed down. He stayed consistent. He has been good all season. He has been a top player in the league since 2018, but 2020 was really his year where he proved to everybody that Carpe is still an elite player and still one of the best DPS players in the league and one of the best players in the league in general. And that is why he is my MVP. Let me know your thoughts on my award winners in the comments down below. I'd love to hear who you have as the winner and who you think is going to win these awards for the actual league itself. Curious to hear what you have to say, but that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. But I'm going to get out of here. Hope you're all staying safe and healthy. And until next time, bye-bye.